We should be going live in about 2 seconds. And should be seeing a couple of fans here in the chat joining us. Mr. Luke. Lego Marvel Entertainment. Hello there, my friend. Thank you so much for joining the stream, the podcast actually today. Hello there, guys. Rickle Pick, Teddy Craddock, John Carter, Godzilla Army. Thank you guys so much for joining the podcast today. And of course, Lewis Bretchen says Scotland #1. So Monty,
as always,
you got that. Scotland #1. New Thrawn book cover was just released. I didn't see that. New Thrawn book cover was just released, or it should be this one I'm watching right now. Hello there, guys. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. We have a couple of special guests, I would say, in the Star Wars community, excluding myself, of course. It's it's Star Wars Reading Club.
Hey, how's it going, Bessie? Thanks for having me on here.
Very well. You're welcome. You're most welcome. And then we have Star Wars Ramblings. Hello there, Star Wars Ramblings, aka Andrew, your real name.
Thank you for having me.
No problem, my friend. And of course, we have Palpatine himself, Monty.
I've been expecting you.
He's shy right now.
I've got a cold.
He's shy right now.
2.5 hours the other days. Yeah, still recovering.
Still recovering? I thought the dark side gave you more powers than that. I thought you would heal up by now.
Almost getting there.
So the dark side powers are all Imperial propaganda at this point.
It's like a battery.
Right.
I'll plug in every now and again.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us in the live stream, and you guys for joining me on the podcast, Star Wars Reading Club, Star Wars Ramblings, Monty, and myself, Bessie. Thank you, Bessie, for joining us today in the podcast. I'm congratulating myself. And moving towards the topics. Today, I want to talk about the recent information that came out. Actually, it says here the article is on November 22nd, so it's just today. And about 4 or 5 hours ago, it released on an interview with Andy Serkis made for Entertainment Weekly. So, what he goes on to say is this. He called Snoke a cruel master, a 9-foot-tall alien humanoid who disparages and dominates Kylo Ren and General Hux. Well, basically, we are mostly aware of this. But what he goes on to say is that his training of Kylo Ren is not yielding what he actually wants. So therefore, his anger towards Kylo Ren is intensified because he can't bear weakness in others. So part of the manipulation is goading him with Hux and playing them off against each other. Firstly, there's more, but I want to get your thoughts on this. We saw this in The Force Awakens where these two were kind of pitted against each other. So I wanted to get your thoughts on these two. How will this rivalry, I guess, progress, and what role will Snoke play further?
Well, I'm just wondering, too. I'm just having a quick read here through, Bessie, but the training of Kylo not yielding the results that he wants is the thing that sticks out the most. Now, I'm not sure. I've been of the opinion, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, but that he wants more of a balance or at least more self-control within Kylo. So I think it might be a self-control issue. But if we say that we're going to be getting more Kylo Ren and Hux in this one, then I'm happy to see that, but I'm not too sure. I think just maybe to pinpoint down first of like what's exactly his end goal with Kylo and you know, just understanding why he's not getting what he wants from Kylo Ren, because we've seen in the trailers, or at least what we've seen so far, we can only speculate in a lot of ways, but there seems like there's still a lot of conflict within him on which side he's going to come down to the Force, whether or not he's full dark or light. But I think maybe just the first thing that sticks out to me is just Kylo still not being exactly in control of his emotions. I think connecting from episode 7 as well.
I see. I'm gonna tackle this. What you just said, I'm gonna tackle in the end. I just want to hear from Star Wars Rambling as well, and Monty. So go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that Snoke, I think, is still the same basic archetype of character as Palpatine. He's still kind of playing the mean stepdad.
Sure. Yeah.
With his underlings. We saw it both in Legends and even now in canon that Palpatine played everybody against each other, because then that meant that the strongest rose to the top, and it kept people motivated. It kept his underlings motivated to keep pushing, to keep being better, to keep being more in control of themselves and more in control of their own situation. And I think Snoke is... I'm still not convinced that Snoke is the main big baddie for the new trilogy. I think... Yeah, I still think that Snoke is going to be more of a big baddie for The Last Jedi, not necessarily for Episode 9. Just because the way Rian Johnson is as a storyteller, with Looper and Brick and Brothers Bloom and everything.
I'm a big fan of Looper, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he doesn't go along the traditional paths, as it were, as much as you want to say, TFA was a remake of A New Hope, blah, 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 whatever.
Sure.
Which it needed to be.
Of course.
But
sure.
I think that Rian Johnson's going to take it in a different direction to get away from that Snoke archetype, that Palpatine archetype. So.
I'm really fascinated by what you just said. I'm gonna tackle both reading clubs and yours, Andrew's point. Monty, do you have something to share with us?
Yeah, I'll just reading it. It doesn't seem to me that he's doing it for the same reasons as the Emperor did or would have done. But I don't know. Dare I say, it's kind of like that sort of Hitler-esque type behavior of playing everybody off against everybody, keeping everybody, lower down.
That was Stalin was mostly known about these type of tactics. But moving from that, what I wanna really quickly discuss Andrew's point. You have a great point there, Andrew, for the simple reason that definitely The Force Awakens needed to be what it was, right? So they wanted to revamp the franchise and go give you that quick maybe goading us to the dinner table with sweets, basically, is how I interpret The Force Awakens. So we don't want to come to the dinner table, we don't want to eat soup and eat our dinner, but they goad us with sweets and tell us that there's a sweet waiting for you in the end. So it's like, okay, we had The Force Awakens, we had the revamp, we felt what we were supposed to feel from a Star Wars film, which was an unknown hero rising to the top, hopefully more slowly than in The Force Awakens. She kind of came to her own really quickly, but I understand why, because there are some things that we don't know about her. Many fans were complaining that, she's a Mary Sue, and she did everything well immediately, without any training, without anything. But it's sort of it's an understandable thing, because we don't know anything about her. We're gonna find out why she actually has those abilities. But the thing that struck me that you said greatly is that I don't believe, like you do, that Snoke won't be present. Are you saying he won't be the main villain in 9, or he won't be present at all in Episode 9?
I have a theory on how The Last Jedi is going to play out. In that I think that Rey and Kylo are going to be forced to confront Snoke together, and because I think that the main bad thing in this new sequel trilogy is going to be more of like a wellspring of the dark side, the source of the dark side, or the first corruption of the Force. Something of that nature, something more ethereal than just another dark side Force user.
And we see that with the removal of the Sith completely. And
yes, exactly.
Yeah, we kind of see the we have Star Wars Legacy in the chat. Hello there, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us, and all of you guys. Just in the context of that, yes, it's Snoke. While I don't think he will completely disappear after The Last Jedi, I think he will be present, but there is a connection, an undeniable connection, and I've seen that in the trailers. I've seen that in the marketing, and even I've seen that in the poster. Something connects Luke and Snoke. What that is, I think it's definitely Rey, and of course Kylo. But the new thing that connects them again is Rey. So you see in the poster where, for example, sometimes you can imagine Snoke there. You see Luke in between the dark and the light. Then you see the new trailer. What I'm fascinated with is that if I quickly go through it, it's basically when she enters into the river. I'm sure you guys remember this, but when she enters and she comes out of the pool or river, whatever is the correct word here, when she comes out of it, that is when she enters, quote unquote, this dark side cave that Luke enters in Dagobah. That's basically the parallels of it. So when she sees Luke standing in an ominous position, because as of right then, the what I call Force Vision 2.0 has already started at that point. So we saw her have a Force Vision in The Force Awakens where she kind of recounted her past. And now I think she's going to recount either her present and her future, in a sense. So we see Luke standing in an ominous position, which gives out immediately to me that that's a Force Vision. And I think 3 scenes from that trailer are a Force Vision. With this new image, my theory kind of is shattered, but I'm still not 100% sure. There's the scene where she comes out of the water and she sees Luke in an ominous position. That's obviously, for me, part of the Force Vision. Then we move towards the things will not go as you what was the line? Things won't go as you think. This will not go as you think.
Yeah, the way you think, exactly.
Yeah, so it's the same. If you watch that shot, it's the same one from The Force Awakens. It's raining. It's nighttime. It completely gives out the. And she even has a lightsaber on, and Luke is on the ground. So it's sort of a. It's definitely. In my mind, that's part of the vision, where she's going to come out of the water, see Luke, maybe have some sort of a conversation of sorts, and then he's going to either she's going to attack her or he's going to attack him in that vision, sort of. He's going to fall down. He's going to say, this won't go as you think. But the third part, which now with this new image, actually I have it on the thumbnail, I was definitely on the mindset that the scene where Snoke is trying to is using the Force on Rey and pulling her life force, or whatever the case may be. I was on the mindset that was a Force Vision as well, or Snoke tugging at her through the Force.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. And like, is that connected to we were talking briefly before about that Resist TV spot
Exactly.
Yeah, where Luke is saying to her,
Exactly. She could
what
be.
is he?
You have this image with Kylo Ren behind her, right? So you have the notion that Kylo Ren brought Rey to the throne room where Snoke is at presently is, and will use the Force to pull the life force out of her. But is it a premonition? Is this scene the same scene that Luke saw when he cut off Vader's head inside the cave, and then he saw his face? Is this the future that Rey is sort of afraid of? It's my question. Even in the trailer, and I will let you guys talk about this, but even in the trailer, if you watch that trailer right now, you will see that it says when Rey, the moment she comes out of the water, Snoke says, "Fulfill." We see Luke, "Your," and then we see Destiny with Snoke pulling at Rey. So those two scenes are connected right there in the trailer. Luke, the Force vision starts with Snoke saying "fulfill," and then ends with "your destiny," where Snoke is using the Force. So those two scenes are connected in the trailer, and I think will be connected in the actual film through the Force vision.
New theory: The Last Jedi is one very, very long Force vision.
I'm
We all
not
wake
so
up
far
and we
off.
realize, and then we all wake up and we realize, oh, Luke already actually died, and she just
Yeah.
passed out when she found him.
It was,
I hope not just in regards to. I do hope that we see a Rey and Snoke confrontation outside of the Force vision, but I don't know if I'm on the same line, Bessie. Only because I think of course, too, just everything's my own speculation at this
Sure.
point. But I see the scenes with Rey in the water, and also the emergence of Luke being there, and that great line that we get from Luke. I don't see those as visions, and I'm not sure if I see them as there could be an akin to the Dagobah cave as well, but I
so
don't
you
know.
don't
I've worked
think
it out
we
in my
will?
mind.
You don't think we will get the dark side cave Dagobah scene in The Last Jedi? Because if we do that, that one is it, in my opinion, 100%. Because she enters something dark, and when at the moment she comes out, she sees Luke there, and she's shocked. I'm going by her face expressions. So that to me is an immediate giveaway. At that moment the Force vision has started.
Right. Yeah. See, the thing is I do think that we will probably get something close to the Dagobah cave in The Last Jedi. See, but I think, when we hear Luke say this isn't going to go the way you think, I think her emergence from, where it's whatever scene that is, where it's raining and she's coming out of the water, I think that it's tied into those books more than anything. And I think Rey has gone off to search for knowledge on her own at that point, and I think Luke is preventing her. That's where we get into the trailer, where Luke is just basically saying what his greatest fear is, and then again to stop it. I think it's tied into those books, but I'm not sure. I would have to think about that. I like the Force vision, but
See, now
I do hope we get the
giving me
Dagobah cave scene.
my thinking is we will definitely get a Dagobah scene, but now you're giving me a new thought. Do you think that she will have the same sort of reaction? She will have her start to the Force vision will be the touching of those books, as it did with the lightsaber. Will it be the same, basically the same thing with the books? When she sees those books and touches those books, will it transport her into
another vision? Yeah, I think that something like that would be really cool. I mean, I've worked out in my head what those books are. I don't know if other people have as well, but ancient lore of some sort. So
Yes.
based just on an importance aspect, I could see that being very cool. But I do see a lot of the setup in my mind is a lot of conflict between Rey and Luke as well. For example, I think Rey is going to be trying to come up with solutions as best she can to
With
try to
her
defeat
limited
the First Order.
knowledge, yeah.
Exactly, but she needs to more so tap Luke for that knowledge, and he's resisting due to his fears of having another Kylo Ren situation on his hands. But I think she's in it at this point and isn't going to turn back. She wants to know everything that she can at this point, whereas I think Luke is the one that's going to be in her way as a barrier in a lot of ways, which is why, again, too, like you're saying, that great scene with both of them, and then Luke telling her, in my opinion, that this isn't going to go the way you think. That's where I think a lot of it is playing out in those trailers, again, too, just my speculation. But I do want to see, I think that we will see Rey proceeding forward as best she can with limited knowledge, and Luke reluctantly being dragged along for the ride as well. But I do see him as having given up quite extensively at this point too, with Rey being the one that's trying to figure it all out.
I was a new speculation then. Does the knowledge and the books and the research that Luke did, does it lead to Snoke? And that's why Rey, I'm thinking voluntarily, comes in front of Snoke, same way Luke did with Vader and Palpatine. Does it ultimately lead to Snoke? And does it, that's why he is warning her that it will not go as you think.
I think
because we know that Snoke is an ancient being, right? And it could have a tie-in with the old Jedi folklore and the Force, and but Snoke, of course, went the different route with the dark side and everything. So, yeah, what do you guys think about that?
Well, my opinion is that the way that they're going to get Rey and Luke off of Octo, depends on which story group member you're talking to.
Right.
That we're going to get some Force sensitivity from Leia, and Leia is going to, I think that the Resistance is going to end up in such a dire situation that she kind of presses the big red button.
Right.
And just like sends a telepathic message through the Force to Luke and or Rey and goes, no, you guys need to stop messing around. You guys need to set aside whatever you're dealing with, and you need to be here now.
Yeah. Or it could be her imminent death. It could be that which they sense, and because basically with Carrie Fisher dead, I think they confirmed that she won't be back for Episode 9. Basically.
Yeah. They did put out a statement.
They said that there will not be another actress hired. There will not be a CG character replace Tarkin thing. I'm definitely on the mindset that she will die in The Last Jedi for sure, or off screen after The Last Jedi.
I don't think that they could get away with killing off Princess / General / Senator Leia off screen. They could not, that'd be like killing off Luke or Han off screen. You can't do that.
Exactly.
The fans won't stand for that. And I think that they're going to use, I think that Rian Johnson is resourceful enough to use the death of Leia as a way of bringing Kylo further towards the light. My opinion is that, from that second trailer, I think that we got on October 9th, where we get that shot of Kylo in his TIE silencer, and he's targeting the bridge on the Radis, where we're presuming Leia is. I think that he is going to have the shot. He won't take it, and then Snoke is going to take it for him from the supremacy, which is in pursuit. And then Kylo is going to fly into a rage because, well, Snoke just killed his mother. And he's going to end up charging back and ending up in a confrontation with Snoke along with Rey and or maybe Luke.
That's really interesting. That's a real possibility. Will they... See, this is my main issue, my main problem. Let's start from the beginning. They killed off Han Solo for obvious reasons, character issues, actor issues, everything. So they killed off Han Solo because they didn't anticipate that Carrie Fisher will die. So they definitely had, because I remember an interview Colin Trevorrow gave to the now former director of Episode 9, but he gave an interview where he said the elder character, so meaning Luke and Leia, will have a very big much bigger roles, will have much bigger roles in the story and in everything in Episode 9. With that thinking, I think they planned something with Luke and Leia combined to pull Kylo Ren from Snoke. But now with Carrie Fisher dead, and of course that character, I have no idea what they're going to do with that character, honestly. But with her gone, only Luke is left to really pull him from Snoke or from the dark side. But the problem, my biggest issue is, character-wise, is the cliches. That's my biggest issue with this. Is, are we going to see another Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader storyline rehashed, basically? And Rey is Luke and everything else. So is it cliche for Kylo Ren to get redeemed same as Darth Vader?
I think that I want to say it's not resurrection, redemption arcs.
Redemption arcs.
Since the redemption arcs have been cliche since, well, probably 2,000 or 3,000 BC. Star Wars in general, it's always borrowed from other themes. I mean, you've got the Western themes, and then you've got the mythological undertones of the hero's journey and this, that, and the other thing. So I'm okay with them, quote, rehashing or taking inspiration from, is what I'd rather call it, taking inspiration from other older stories by having a redemption arc for Kylo.
So what you're implying is that he can be redeemed, but in a different way from Vader, is what I would accept, other than just redeem. This is why your story kind of makes sense. Your theory actually kind of makes sense, that the death of the involuntary death of her mother will actually be the breaking point, could be the breaking point for Kylo Ren. I just don't want to see the same cliches over and over again, where we see the same story arc as the previous characters. That's my main issue here.
Yeah, I'm okay with Rey being a influence on Kylo's turn back to being Ben, as long as that's not the single thing. Because, with Luke and Vader, it was Luke that showed him kindness, that showed him forgiveness, that continually told him, no, there's still good in you, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's what turned Vader back into Anakin at the end of Return of the Jedi. As long as they don't exactly copy that, where it's Rey saying, no, I know that there's still good in you, I sense good in you, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then they, and then Kylo goes, you know what, maybe there is still good in me. And then he does that. Then, yeah, I'm right there with you on being a little bit annoyed with that. But with that being said, I don't think that that's going to happen, because I don't think Rey thinks that there is anything good in Kylo whatsoever. She's still like, if you look at that.
She witnessed him killing his father, and her father figure and his actual father. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at like their duel in the at the end of The Force Awakens, Rey is not using the light side of the Force.
Absolutely.
In the end of that fight, she's like almost stalking him. Like, her arms are out at her sides and her teeth are bared, and she's like circling him like a panther or something would.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what actually led to all those Palpatine theories, where it was like she's the granddaughter of Palpatine, which kind of ridiculous, but sure. Theories. Glenn, what do you think about all of this?
The funny thing is I might not be the best one to ask. I've been all over the place on Kylo Ren on redemption arcs. I had initially thought that we were going to see a much darker Kylo in Episode 8, but once the trailer came out, I think that I threw that out the window. I thought we were going to see him pretty much, not mirror Vader, but at this point, we do have a character that's, I mean, to give Kylo his due, and Adam Driver as well, we do have a character that's pretty different from Vader at this point. So as much as I would really dislike it if they redeemed Kylo in any way that was close to Vader, which is why initially after Episode 7 I was hoping that they wouldn't redeem Kylo. I do think that we'll see it, but I'd like to think more that the redemption, or I think that there's a connection between Rey and Kylo that's going to play out over the next two films. So I do think that we'll see him, quote unquote, redeemed by the end. I don't think that it will be mirroring much of Vader at that point. Because if we have, like you guys have been, if we get what you guys have been saying, where Rey is Luke, and I know there's still good in you, Kylo, I think that would be very disappointing. But if we have Kylo, for example, see, the thing that gets me all the time is there is a big connection with Han and Leia as well with the character of Kylo, so that might be close to Luke. How Vader had Luke as a big catalyst for his redemption. I don't know. At this point, I think we'll see it, but I hope that in a lot of ways it stays away from what Vader's redemption looked like. I think you could redeem him because it is a device, like Andrew was saying, that's been used forever, but you can do it in a way that's very unique and dissimilar from Vader. And I do think at this point that he is redeemed in the end. Whether or not he goes after Snoke is the real interesting question too, though.
Could be, but if he gets redeemed, in my mind, there is no other option really. But yeah, everything right now it's perfect how they really got everything. They've opened up so many holes that you don't know which one to fill. So it's interesting to see as a marketing strategy, and as story-wise and actors and everything are co-conspirators in this big grand scheme of a story. There is no really plugging a hole and thinking that, and that's the brilliancy of Lucasfilm, that they have that pat down, that you can't really approach the story in any linear way or any really. That's all up to Disney. If they move into the cliche area, I would really be disappointed.
Well, that's a good point too, Bessie. Sorry to cut you off there. I mean, I think we might have dismissed it, but you guys, that's a great point too. What happens if they do something that's completely unexpected? We've dismissed it in some sense, but do you see any way that Kylo kills Leia, that he does fire the shot, and everything that we've seen up until this point has led everyone to believe one thing and he goes in the opposite direction?
If he does, then it's done. Then it's basically it's over for him. Maybe before he is killed, he will regret. He maybe regrets it immediately, but the peer pressure, that's the problem here, is that we're not putting in the real life situations in mind, because there is peer pressure from Snoke, from General Hux. Everyone thinks he's a failure, he's a loser. People were joking around the internet, he got beat by a girl. So that's it's the real life situations that we go through. And with Star Wars, we don't really think about those stuff, but we need to in this point, because he will be pressured into some things, especially now with the new training and with Snoke. As I just mentioned in the interview, he is frustrated with Kylo Ren, and that's because he's not panning out as he's supposed to be. That light is really not letting him achieve that full potential. The full potential being a murderous psychopath. So that's really my thing. Is that I will end it by saying that I hope they don't do a cliche thing. That's all I'm hoping for at this point.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Real quick, I do just want to touch on how Rey beat Kylo in the TFA. Rey beat Kylo because Kylo was suffering a massive emotional wound of just killing his own father, and it didn't work out the way he wanted it to. It didn't seem... Adam Driver didn't give me the performance of somebody who's like, yes, now I am one with the dark side. He went, wait, that didn't work. I actually feel regret and shame for what I just did. Mm-hmm. Plus, you know, he did catch what is effectively a rocket launcher in the gut. So, yeah.
It's truly going to be interesting. I think right now I'm 70-30 on him. They really don't. I don't think he's gonna pull that trigger. Yeah, it's really hard for me to give out to give a call right now and say that there's no way he's not gonna pull, because he is being pressured so much right now by Snoke and by everyone around him.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bessie.
No, it's just. That's my main thing, is that we are preconditioned by George Lucas and by the previous Lucasfilm administration to not think of real life situations when it comes to a Star Wars movie or Star Wars story or saga. We get that from the comics. We see a lot of things from the comics and from the books and from the novels that have sort of that grounded mentality where it deals with the real life situations. So I think Star Wars as a film franchise will start moving towards that mentality, where what if this happens to you? Whereas previously we really couldn't feel that with other moments in Star Wars. Not really. When it comes to this type of situations, of course, with Luke as a young man in the old trilogy, we related to him a lot. And the problem with the prequels is that we didn't relate with anyone other than, like, I related with Qui-Gon. I loved Qui-Gon so much, but that character is basically useless in the Phantom Menace and in the whole storyline. You have those real life situations and those things that you think about. The real life situation is this: you need to close out a deal. You're an agent, or you work for an agency, or whatever the case may be. This is real life. You work for a real agency. You have a job to accomplish. Your boss is disappointed in you. Your coworkers are disappointed in you. Everyone is disappointed in you. So you're going off to this big meeting where you could get this huge deal, right? Everything is hanging in the balance. Everything is in your hands, basically. So I look at it at the same rate. Knowing Rian Johnson, he will try to implement real life stories and real life situations in this film, and that's basically my thinking, is that when it comes down to it, he will have immense pressure on his shoulders by Snoke and by Hux and everyone around him. Whether he shoots or not, I have no idea. I'm not going to even tackle that.
Shoot first.
Yeah. We all know what Palpatine thinks. All right. Andrew from Star Wars Ramblings has to go. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining us today on this podcast. It was a real pleasure. And, of course, I look forward to you joining us in future podcasts and talking Star Wars and whatever the case may be. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, unfortunately, like we were just talking about real life calls. Bills are a thing. You guys have a wonderful one. Thank you guys.
Thanks, you too, Andrew.
People watching, and you guys have a wonderful one. I look forward to talking with you guys soon.
Thank you.
Have a good one, Andrew.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great day, Andrew, and talk to you soon.
Yep. See ya.
See ya. And yeah, Palpatine, you have been silent.
I've been listening. I find it very fascinating. I think maybe there's a third way. Maybe if Snoke's not very happy with him, and he can't do anything right, and the other guys are taking the mick and doing whatever, is it possible that he could actually just go sort of rogue, and when Snoke sort of gets rid of him because he sees that Rey is actually a better candidate,
right?
That may tip him over the edge, and he may just be out there doing his own thing, potentially
A bounty hunter.
well, no, not a bounty hunter, as in he's become basically, he's a loose cannon. He does what he wants to do. He's off the rails basically at that point, because I could see that happening. The Emperor tried to do that with Vader a few times. Something better comes along.
I actually really like that. I given some thought of him going rogue as well. I thought perhaps too you could have both of them go rogue, Rey and Kylo, in a lot of ways. If she's not getting what she wants from Luke, and Kylo's under the thumb of Snoke, and that's not proceeding as well, maybe you could have, I think Andrew had mentioned it earlier, you have those two be crucial to the story in episode 9. But yeah, I like third ways. I like to think of cast a wide net in where all this could go.
Do something new.
Imagine a complete storyline with Kylo Ren and Rey saying just F everything. Let's take it. Let's do something totally different and live out a completely different life.
Nerf herders.
That would be beautiful. All right. With that being said, therefore, anger towards is intensified. All right. I want to read towards this one a bit more. So Andy Serkis, in the interview that we previously mentioned, he went on to say that the thing about Snoke is that he is extremely strong with the Force, the dark side of the Force. He's terribly powerful, of course, but he is also very vulnerable and a wounded character. So it's not really clear if he says a wounded character as in physically, or he has a wounded character in a sense of personality. So he has suffered injury. The way that his malevolence comes out in reaction to that, his hatreds, and this is the interesting part. His hatred of the Resistance is fueled by what's happening to him, what's happened to him personally. So he is basically insinuating that there is something personal when it comes to the Resistance.
Yeah, that is interesting.
His hatred towards the Resistance is something much personal than we think. It's not just a military opponent, but something in a grander scheme. Something in the past that we don't really we aren't really aware of. So far, what we know is that he witnessed the rise and the fall of the Empire, basically.
Right.
So that could be the rebellion as well, then, as opposed to just specifically the Resistance.
Could be the predecessors to that, but it's interesting to see this because he insinuates that there is something more going on that we don't know between the First Order and the Resistance and the leader of the First Order. Could it be Leia, as she is the leader of the Resistance and Snoke is the leader of the First Order? So if this is something that is personal to him, that could lead to Leia, basically. Again, to read the quote, he says, the way that his malevolence comes out is in reaction to that, meaning his wounded character, and that he is very vulnerable. And his hatred of the Resistance is fueled by what's happened to him personally. His hatred for the Resistance is fueled by...
So that's going to be... It's going to be something that happened to him, I would say, while the Resistance was the Rebel Alliance. If he's that old,
right?
It's not going to... I think he's only saying Resistance in that piece because he doesn't want to, cloud people.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, in
It
terms of
may have
talking
been
about it.
directed by Lucasfilm employees in that line.
So,
But my thing is
not
that
to cloud the water between people obviously not knowing the difference between the two, because, you know, it could happen.
it could be something personally with Leia. That's why I'm saying. That's what I mean is that.
Oh yeah, but
he's the
she's
leader.
obviously been there from the beginning, hasn't she? I mean, she
Right.
was
Right. She
you
led
know,
the rebellion and
pretty much. Yeah.
basically joined the New Republic as a government, as a senator, but seeing that again it got bogged down to bureaucracy and everything, she formulated the resistance.
Just seems to me as if whatever's happened to him must have happened some time ago. It just it didn't happen a couple of weeks ago, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Given his physical state,
Right.
it's obvious he's obviously been scarred badly at some point in the past, and that would, to me, would make more sense that it would have been during the rebellion as opposed to, you know, anything else.
Glenn, any thoughts on this, or should we move on?
I guess before moving on, perhaps, I mean, I'm trying to pinpoint what the exact connection is too, just by reading his quotes. I don't know. I'm trying not to read too much into what Andy Serkis is saying, but his hatred of the Resistance is fueled by what's happened to him personally. So I don't know if the connection is there. You know, what came about directly with the Resistance, like for example with Leia, or
Right.
if the connection is just back towards the rebellion era as well, like you guys are saying, because that whole watch the rise and fall of the Galactic Empire.
He was basically, by him saying that, he was present, because we still don't know what present means. He could have been asleep for hundreds of years. What does that? We don't know his backstory. But basically, if he was risen or if he was present, quote unquote, he was basically before even Leia was born. If you think about it, because the rise, that's when Leia was born. Because see, I'm everything I'm connecting to is to Leia right now, simply because she is the Resistance, and if something happened to him personally, it should have been in the rebellion era or something. This could give out his character as well, that we still don't know. Maybe he is linked to something that we still do not know.
Oh, I know what it is. During the collapse of the Empire, when Coruscant was retaken, they destroyed the statue outside the Imperial Palace. His family was underneath that when it fell over.
I see.
He's a bitter man.
Don't talk too much, or these Star Wars sites will get it. We'll formulate a new theory on that.
I already have an outline for a video coming.
Yeah, well, it falls over. It's a pretty big statue. Who knows how many it killed?
Or when the statue fell, that's why Snoke is so disfigured, because he was underneath. So he got injured by the statue.
You know what, even too, I don't know how much have you guys maybe thought about Snoke being originating from the Unknown Regions or anything connected to that with the fun novel?
Oh, definitely. I think that's where we're going. I hate it personally, but I think that's where we're definitely going. We see Thrawn when he's introduced. We don't see, but we read that when Thrawn was introduced to the Emperor, the first thing he said was, "There's a great threat in the Unknown Regions that you're not aware of," and Palpatine actually did sense a big black presence in the Unknown Regions. That's why the expeditions happened and everything. So there's definitely an Unknown Regions thing going on that we're still not fully aware of. Personally, I hate it. Of my thinking of. If we go back to The Force Awakens, my biggest thing that I love, that if that theory would be to pan out, but so far, like, there is no way of that happening, but I'm just gonna the theory that he was Darth Plagueis was the most intriguing thing about this character to me. I was really hoping that he could in some way be Darth Plagueis or a resurrection or whatever the case may be. He survived. So far, like, that's proven to be not the case.
Right.
But I would have loved it if we explored in the canon, if we explored Plagueis's story and backstory and future story in with Snoke, if he was somehow to be connected to Darth Plagueis or is Darth Plagueis. But definitely there is something to say about the unknown regions, because I think they are moving. It's a metaphor as well. The unknown regions. Disney wants to get out of the whole dark side, light side, Sith, Jedi thing going on in Star Wars. They want to go,
I agree,
towards the unknown. It's a good metaphor. The unknown regions, explore something, because there was the thing that the new trilogy that will be directed by Rian Johnson. It will feature a completely new setting, a new location, which I think was quoted as being in the unknown regions. So they definitely...
That's cool. That's exactly what I'm thinking too, Bessie. Yeah, I think with that new trilogy, it'd be cool if we could see something with of course, I would say this, but Chiss ascendancy, and if Snoke is originating out of the unknown regions, whatever the story is there between the 30 years of episodes 6 and 7. I don't know. I think that would be
for the Chiss,
interesting for a setting. What's that?
In regards to the Chiss ascendancy and that whole narrative thing, that's a given for me. If they move towards the unknown regions, that's a whole treasure trove waiting to be explored, with the Chiss and everything, and Thrawn, and possibly the family of Thrawn, something like that. We will see. That's no question for me. What my issue is, the origin of Snoke being from the unknown regions. I would have loved if he was somehow linked to the to the old characters, or something that we know. Then use Snoke as a platform to move towards the unknown regions. Snoke and Thrawn.
Yeah, that would be really cool. It's funny too, Bessie. That's how I started as well. I would have wanted the character connected in some ways, but I don't know. I don't even really know where I sit with Snoke at this point. I'm probably thinking original character, and maybe as you probably wouldn't like it, but I think he is originating out of the unknown regions. But right. I guess we'll have to see at this point.
There could be a cool story there. Like we still don't know anything about it. So the future Star Wars could explore something really beautiful with the unknown regions, and with Snoke, the Chiss ascendancy being right at the border of the mapped out galaxy, but it's too new, too quick. I would have loved if we got some connection before we moved completely to the unknown regions. Talking about what you said about let me just ask you this question before I go on a tangent here. What do you the new teaser that we got, Rey Resist, the Resist Rey thing, what is she resisting, basically, is my question for you, because many people are speculating that she is resisting the dark side, but I don't think that's the case, because she says, Luke actually asks her, what do you see? She says, I see the light and I see the dark. And then she proceeds to say, and I see I feel, or I see something else, and then the whole madness starts, where Luke is like, resist, and she cracks I think she cracks the rock where she is standing on, or
right,
meditating or something like that. But what do you think she's resisting? Because she's definitely not resisting the dark. She mentioned the dark and she did not flinch. The light and the dark, she did not flinch, but she panicked when she said something else. Could that be Snoke, right, or is it something more that we're not thinking about?
See, I'm with you on it's not the dark side, because you just said it too, Bessie. I do think that they're moving away from the knowns being dark side, light side, Sith, Jedi. I think I don't know what it is, but I always tend to go towards the Force in a lot of these things. It could certainly be Snoke, perhaps some type of pull from Snoke or influence there, but I think that I always look at what that scene is representing. I think that that's probably the first meditation session that we get between Rey and Luke. And I think that that's where we get the whole, from the teaser trailer, what do you see, breathe? What do you see? And she says, the light side, the dark side. And then he says, or she might say the balance. And then he says, is so much bigger than either of them individually. But nonetheless, I think that she's going down a road where it's not the light or dark that she's fearing, or she has to pull away from just the dark. I do think that it is the power of the Force in and of itself in a type of balanced way. I don't know. That's where I am with a lot of these scenes, but I don't think that it's just the dark side. I do think that she's tapping into the full power of the Force in a way that balances both light and dark together. But it's probably
Perhaps
not a
in,
simple answer in that respect.
Absolutely. Perhaps something, that's what I was just about to say, something completely unknown that not a lot of Force users have felt before. Or is it the awakening in her? Maybe that's what she feels, because she ends up cracking the rock.
Right.
We've seen it twice now. So that could be she senses something else. That could be her power within. And
Right.
that's why she basically ends up crushing everything around her, because she really can't control it. It could be a Phoenix thing with that we got from the X-Men universe, sort of the Black Phoenix, or was it the I forget, but it's with Jean Grey. We get with Jean Grey we get the deity, the demigod that has basically is within Jean Grey. That's why she is the most dangerous X-Men out of all of them. And the thing is that she can't control it. If it gets out, it will completely demolish everything in her path. And that's why Professor X is always alerted towards her presence and tries to keep the Black Phoenix in check within her. Works 24 hours to control her mind and basically imprison the Dark Phoenix to not fully implement herself within Jean Grey. We could be seeing something similar with Rey here. Something she definitely is extremely powerful, to the point that people are afraid of her. With just 1% of her power, she demolished Kylo Ren, left him for dead on Starkiller Base. If it wasn't for General Hux and Snoke getting him, he would probably be dead right now.
Right.
There could be something, a Jean Grey connection with Rey here. Something that she can't control, but Luke is trying to keep it in check. Could be a thing that we're still young and we don't understand the elderly. Towards same way as teenagers would be in this case, where, for example, your parent advises you on something or tells you not to do it, and you're basically, as a teenager, like, they don't understand me. But when you come to their position, you then realize what they were talking about. This could be something in the same line, where Luke is trying to prevent something that he knows would go out of anyone's control, even Rey's. So that's my line of thinking. It could be something explosive to the point where it could basically destroy the galaxy.
I agree, and I do think that it is tied to her power with the Force. I don't think that there's... do you guys think that it's Snoke that she's trying to find, or there might be some influence there? Because I do think that it is the Force and her power that's really what's freaking Luke out. And at this point, he is kind of... Like, I see Luke as just at the very bottom at this point. Like, he's hit rock bottom. He's basically scared to kind of do anything at this point, I think, when we find him in episode 8. So I think when he sees Rey venturing down a path that, if we take it from the teaser trailer, is going down one where she sees the light in the dark, and there might be some sort of balance in there to know how powerful she could be. He's very scared that he's going to have another Kylo Ren. But that said, I do think that it's the Force that's something related to the Force that's making Luke freak out so bad.
Well, that's why Luke is basically so afraid, and then people don't really understand why he's so afraid. Because in his mind, he's like, Kylo, with Ben Solo, I trained him. He turned dark and everything, and he betrayed me. But he's not nearly as powerful as you are. So what if the question is, if you do the same thing, Kylo Ren is not even is a grain of salt in comparison to you, what you would be capable of doing. This is what might bring him to this point where he's resisting Rey every step of the way, basically, so that she does not go off on her own and basically just
become another Kylo, basically, and 10 times maybe as powerful. Who knows at this point? I think Kylo's pretty powerful as well, with potential at least. But see, and that's a great point too, Bessie. That's why I think exactly how you said there is that's how I can see the Rey and Luke portions of the movie playing out, at least in the beginning. I do think that, Rey is tapping into all of this power for the first time, and she realizes she could use it against the First Order and Snoke and Kylo, but Luke is so low at this point that he doesn't even if it is possible to use that power against the First Order, I think that he doesn't want her to venture down that path for the exact reason of what happened with Kylo.
So why is Rey in the presence of, if this is a true scene, if this is, I'm still on the mindset that this could all be a misdirection, Force vision, something along those lines. But if it's true, and Rey is presently at the throne room, as we see in the trailer, and Snoke is using the Force and everything that transpires afterwards. Why is Rey? Because I'm I'm definitely leaning towards she voluntarily came in, not she.
Right, that's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah, what is she seeking from Snoke?
What is he seeking from her?
But she came in voluntarily.
We don't know that, though, do we?
I am 99.9% sure.
I think
we will have the same thing as Luke when in the Return of the Jedi. If Luke didn't turn himself over, then
I don't think she's going to turn herself over. I think she may well be captured, and I think that Snoke sees in her what Luke does, and he wants it. I think both Luke and Snoke, they can't access whatever she can. I don't think Kylo can either. And maybe Luke tried to, because he's like, this won't end the way you think it will. Maybe he tried to tap into that third power, or that the truth behind the Force, when he, originally set up the new Jedi Academy, and it basically he lost control. It went bad or whatever. He didn't see what was happening, and he doesn't want to go down that road anymore. So he's afraid that if she goes down that road, that she's not going to be able to control it. It won't end. It'll end the same way that it ended for him. And maybe Snoke sees that in her, and he wants that. Maybe he hasn't got control of that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I think that those are the two most likely aspects. I think, though, at some point, that is a really good point too there, with either she turns herself in, which I guess could be maybe if she's having conflict with Luke at that point, she tries to go it alone in some way, maybe a bit naive on her part. But let's say if she is captured, it could be a nice tie-in too with conflict. Maybe she's not getting what she needs from Luke, and she tries to maybe join him to one of these battles, and then at that point is captured.
Because Luke, he must know what she can do, because he says, this won't end the way you think it will. So he knows what she's capable of, and he possibly knows what she can see.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise, why would he say that? Because, if she's tapped into this power that's beyond anything else before, then it's entirely possible that he tried to do that, and it didn't end well for everybody.
Yeah, it is interesting because that is one thing that stood out for me in the trailer too. Is how is Rey and Snoke in the same room together? So I have been thinking about it. I'm not sure I've pinned it down, but those are probably two points that I would say are the most likely. But the whole Force vision is an interesting aspect too, Bessie. I have to admit, I haven't thought too much about that aspect, but it very well could be, that it is a vision akin to Vader and Luke in the cave.
My thing is with Lucasfilm and everyone involved with it, you probably know this. The trailers are not the most concrete source of material. You can't really say with in some cases it's stupidity, of course. With Rogue One, that's I still get angry with that film. We got a completely different film, but of what we saw in the trailers. But that's a whole different aspect. That's that's something that the studio wasn't really liking, and they did. That movie was 60% reshot. So it's not towards those lines where it had reshoots and everything. It's the thing that always has us Star Wars fans clamoring for more is those tidbits, those things that you are not really aware that are misdirections. The moment I saw that, you see that with the Last Jedi trailer. Everything in that trailer is a misdirection. Everything, even down to the last images where Rey says, I need help with all of this, and you see Kylo extending his hand. Obviously a misdirection. So they do this intentionally. With that in mind, I can't believe these things that are really true, because that's the most important thing. This is the climax. This is not something that would happen in episode 8. That's my mindset, basically. Because if everything we've seen happens in episode 8, if we think that she's gonna go to Snoke immediately and Kylo Ren and everything, and with Leia now, with the problem with her character, what is left for episode 9? Because I'm really stumped at this point. If everything is resolved with Snoke, and if everything is resolved with Rey and their relationship, and Kylo Ren and Snoke and Luke and everyone, then not much is left for episode 9, basically. Maybe they have that figured out, but I don't
imagine that was already pre-planned in some form.
Absolutely, but they know what they're doing. But my thing is that they won't show us all this in episode 8. That's my point. And with the talking about misdirections in the misdirections in the trailer, misdirections everywhere.
I even think that article with Andy Serkis might be a bit of a misdirection at some points too. I see a lot of Star Wars buzzwords in there, like dark side, extremely strong with the Force. So I'm probably just as skeptical as you are too, Bessie, on some of the things.
Sure. With those, I definitely think with those two we got a Force vision. With those two scenes, I mean, her coming out of the water and seeing, because she's shocked. If I could show the trailer here, I would, but she is completely shocked when she sees Luke. But the standing position of Luke, that's my biggest, because it's he is standing in a position, in an ominous position. Even his robes are completely dark, the quote-unquote dark robes that got leaked in or got shown basically with those images and screenshots. So it's a dark Luke standing in an ominous position, and immediately then is when the line starts, fulfill your destiny. That is why I think that it's going to be
impossible to tell, really, don't it? Because, like you said, the trailer, they could be hashed together in any way that they wish. They could use deleted footage. They could add extra footage that they're never going to use. Sometimes they even film footage for trailers. So
Absolutely.
I mean, in
That
Ragnarok,
last one's just
the
not
scene
fair.
was, you know,
Yeah.
in Ragnarok where he loses his you know, his hammer. In the trailer, he's in an alleyway on Earth, which is not where it happens in the film. That's not even in the movie, but you know, it's in there for some reason. Maybe they changed their minds. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't think. Who knows what it's going to be? It could be.
In any case, I'm just going to say that
Who knows?
I'm not believing everything that we see on those trailers. I think some of those scenes are Force visions, and I'm on the mindset that that will happen in episode 9. I'm talking about the Rey Snoke meeting. That will happen in episode 9, but not in episode 8. And that's a premonition that Rey sees in her Force vision, that sooner or later she's going to end up in front of Snoke. At least that's what I'm thinking. If not, it's going to be interesting to see episode 9 because not much is left, or they have.
I'm sure they'll surprise you, Bessie.
Oh yes, of course.
You'll be surprised.
They always do. They always do. Drunk Ben Kenobi.
Yeah, he'll be in it.
You should.
Yeah, the ghost. I'm back. You didn't think you'd get the last of me, did you? Now the time has come to reveal the true meaning of the Force.
What if
Your stroke.
What if he comes?
Wow, that's pretty good.
Luke, what if he comes back as a Force ghost, but he's drunk in the Last Jedi?
Not wearing his pants. Yeah. Ooh, I left them behind in the Jedi Temple. Luke, what I told you several years ago was a lie. Of course, you know this because I lie a lot to you when I talk to you.
From a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view, what I told you was completely rubbish. The balance of the Force must be maintained. The order of the Jedi is sacred. Where am I?
Jeez,
wow.
Oh, you
great
Ray.
You haven't heard
sorry.
any.
I thought you were Luke. I didn't mean to intrude upon you. Please continue to undress.
Glenn, you haven't heard anything, my friend. I'm just gonna say
Gosh,
that.
yeah. Palpatine and Obi-Wan. That's a nice range right there.
Yeah, he can do Palpatine, Obi-Wan, Tarkin. Who else can you do?
You put me on the spot now.
Vader.
I don't know. Vader with
Sort
some sort of manipulation. Really, sort of.
All right, Glenn.
Lots of different voices.
Glenn, I want to ask you about the announced Thrawn comic books coming to us in February 2018.
Yeah, which is like right around the corner now at this point. It felt when they announced this, it felt like it was so far away now.
Yeah.
Even these are closing in.
Which is absolutely great. But it's gonna show his rise to the ranks of the Imperials and everything. That's gonna be great. As I asked in the chat in your live stream, how much Anakin Skywalker, or for that matter, Clone Wars, will we get in these comics?
See, that's a great question too. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get much Clone Wars. I'm on the fence about the whole Anakin aspects of the adaptation, because at the end of the day, what these are just an adaptation of the novel that came out in April of this year. But the thing is it's being written by Jody Houser, who also was the writer for the adaptation of the Rogue One comic series.
Right.
Now, as I understand it, I haven't read the comics for Rogue One, but I do understand that there was some original material that was put into the comics that wasn't in the movie. So I really have my fingers crossed that if we don't get Clone Wars era Thrawn within the adaptation, I do hope that we do get some of the animated scenes with Thrawn meeting up with Anakin at some point during the Clone Wars. I mean, it's at least 3 times alluded to in the novel, but we never get that story.
Yes.
The only way that makes me think that it's not likely that we'll see it in this adaptation comic is that they're going to wait for the Thrawn novel that comes out in July of next year to give us all those great Thrawn and Anakin scenes. So That said, though, I'm gonna pick these up. I don't get too many of the comics, but
Right.
a Thrawn adaptation novel of what's probably my favorite canon novel at this point, I'll
Beautiful.
definitely be getting these.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful novel for anyone who's interested, at least a bit in Thrawn. Just read an excerpt out of that. That's just beautiful. I still can't for two moments that I can't forget from the Thrawn novel, and basically that's what they wanted, is the him meeting Palpatine and him meeting Vader for the first time. Those are just
Yes.
beautiful and beautifully written and everything. You even get to learn that, spoilers, Palpatine is a gardener. He loves gardening. But setting aside that, if it's an adaptation of the original novel, then we go to, there is a mention, of course, of Anakin Skywalker, him meeting Anakin Skywalker at least briefly, or having some sort of a venture, a small venture with him. Isn't that, shouldn't they pander to the fans here just a bit? Because it's a comic book issue. See, novels typically are reserved for extreme fans, such as me,
Right. you,
that we are extremely interested in it and basically go for the novels. The average fan really is mostly interested in the comics rather than the novels. At least that's how I view it. So if they're gonna show more, shouldn't it make sense that they will show more about his involvement in the Clone Wars and his involvement with Anakin Skywalker in these comic books, in this comic book series? That's why I asked those days before in your live stream, because I'm thinking about the average fans. That's where my mind goes when I talk about how much Anakin will we have, or how much Clone Wars will we have in these new comic book series, because we already know his inclusion in the Empire, in the Imperial ranks and everything. It's gonna be interesting to watch him go through what's supposedly torture in being an alien in within the Empire, but he's gonna move past that and he's gonna move up in the ranks. What's more interesting for the fans is to know what actually happened with him during the Clone Wars, is my thinking.
Yeah, I think, I mean, maybe it's because we saw the whole rise through the ranks with the novel. I mean, definitely for me, the aspects that are most interesting are what he's doing at the time of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair too, Bessie, that's a great point. They can put in just those couple of scenes if we see some Clone Wars settings within some of the release materials leading up to the release of the comic, then that would pull in a lot of people who maybe wouldn't purchase the comics.
Exactly.
But that's what
I mean, is that it's
Yeah.
you need to pull those fans even more towards you, and what better way to do it than to include something that they're much familiar with, which is the Clone Wars. And what really fans want to know is that what actually happened with Anakin and Thrawn.
Exactly. And to be fair too, it is mentioned a number of times throughout that original novel as well. So I'm just not sure. Have you see, I haven't read an adaptation yet, so I don't know how closely they follow the lines of the original material when they adapt them. But if we're pointing out just how many times Anakin and Thrawn's name come up, it would be a great, for example, when we get that first meeting between Thrawn and Palpatine very early in the book, and you get that awesome name drop of Anakin Skywalker, it would be cool if we had a couple of
flashbacks.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the perfect time, in my opinion, just to throw in if we don't get dialogue, just get something that we can hold on to with Anakin and Thrawn.
Sure. It's definitely going to be through flashbacks, of course. It's either going to be him talking to the Emperor and thinking back, or simply sitting around and thinking back to, hearkening towards those moments that he may have learned a valuable lesson during the time of the Clone Wars and with the Jedi and with everything. So he might be pondering some things in his mind that he needs to flash back to the Clone Wars and the Republic and the Jedi Order and everything. And he may have had a bigger involvement. So far, we don't know. But Anakin is mentioned, I think at least 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
In that novel, because that's my issue that I want them to include more, because what I have read the Thrawn novel, and basically I was left with this huge cliffhanger. I really wanted to know more, because it's just a mention. It's just a frivolous mention. See, right. Thrawn says, they talk about Anakin. Palpatine simply smirks and tells him that Anakin was a good friend. It was unfortunate that he died. And basically, the story is that he died or whatever. And Thrawn will eventually deduce, we will see in the future in adaptations, of course, but he will eventually deduce that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, because he has spent time with him. He has seen him fighting. He knows how he works. He knows how Skywalker works. So basically,
and he did know too. We got Timothy Zahn through it, in that he was extremely loyal to Palpatine as well, to then Chancellor Palpatine. So we know that he would know that he has a close relationship to the Emperor as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's mentioned. That's actually, yes. That's why they mention Skywalker, because he says, I knew a close acquaintance of yours, and that's what actually, it's the first time that I've seen Palpatine stomped. Basically, he pauses for a second, and it's specifically mentioned in the novel, is that when Thrawn says, I knew a previous acquaintance of yours, and Palpatine kind of pauses and he says, oh, really? Who? And we go to the dialogue where he says, I knew an Anakin Skywalker. He was, and then Palpatine says Anakin Skywalker was a dear friend. It was unfortunate that he had to die. And that's basically the gist of it. And we get that, he had met him before through dialogue and everything, and nothing else is explored or mentioned. That's why I think that we will get more in the comics, in a sense of flashbacks or maybe something like that. That to what extent did Thrawn actually know Anakin, or anyone else for that matter, during the Clone Wars?
Well, the really interesting part, too, was I thought we could have got it there with Thrawn and Palpatine discussing further what the flashback was with Anakin and Thrawn. But there was also a scene, if I'm not mistaken, between Eli and Night Swan, where Night Swan asks Eli about him knowing a former Jedi Knight. I could have sworn we were going to get some details at that point, at least from Eli's point of view. But I have to ask you, too, guys, did you think by the end of the novel that Thrawn had deduced that Vader was Anakin, or do you think that at that point was still something he didn't know?
To me, it's still ambiguous. Same as we got with the same storyline could be really copy pasted into Tarkin. Tarkin and Thrawn, for this in this instance, I mean, with the instance that do they know that there are Sith Lords, that Palpatine is a Sith Lord and Vader is a Sith Lord? And do they actually know that Vader was Anakin Skywalker? The same storyline could be actually, it's mirrored. Tarkin and Thrawn, both storylines, I
completely agree,
are mirrored. That by the end, he's still. That's why I said previously, is that in these comics and in the new novel coming out, it's going to be interesting to see his deduction, because we know that, of course, Thrawn is extremely precise in his way of thinking and in his logic. He should, same as Tarkin, everything that Thrawn basically does and goes through, I always mirror it with Tarkin, because they're basically the same character in a sense that they got where they are right now through deductions, through logical, way much more logical thinking. And it's actually, it's a quote right here that I'm reading from the I think Timothy Zahn said this, that he's 10 steps ahead of you basically all the time. You've been defeated before you even think you've been defeated before you even think to pull out your blaster. So Tarkin and Thrawn have gotten to where they are, to their positions, basically through deductions and pragmatic sort of a pragmatic life. We see that in Rebels, of course, with him being, he loses his cool only once with I forget the name of the admiral, the goofy admiral.
Constantine.
That they put him for laughs and gags. I hate that, but whatever.
Right.
We see him lose his cool only once with him, but basically he's the stoic character. The same way again with Tarkin. It mirrors Tarkin. You never see Tarkin lose his cool. The same way with Thrawn. But they are deducing things, and we will see Thrawn coming to a point where he realizes that Skywalker is Darth Vader.
Exactly right. And it's funny you mentioned that too, because I had the exact same feelings reading Tarkin and having those brief mentions of Tarkin actually deducing why Vader might be Anakin, as I did when reading those aspects of the Thrawn novel. Even in that Lucino Tarkin novel, if I'm not mistaken, Tarkin doesn't have an extensive history with Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars. We saw some of the episodes from the Clone Wars TV series where they're together, but outside of that, I don't think that they were together all that much. But for the same reasons that Tarkin was able to, just from those brief interactions with Anakin, he was able to deduce from the way he held his lightsaber to his rapport with the stormtroopers, if I'm remembering right off the top of my head.
Yes.
Even just the way he was kind of looking at him and standing there beside him. All of those things added up to, well, this might be that Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars that I remember. For those exact reasons, I would give Thrawn the benefit of the doubt, having just, of course, we don't know what it is at this point, but just even the briefest interactions between Anakin and Thrawn. If we can get those flashbacks, then for the exact reasons you just said, Bessie, with Tarkin, I would say that Thrawn probably knows. And that part of me wants to even say he knows by the end of the Thrawn novel, even though it's technically their first interaction at that point. But
right.
I think that we will see him put it together if he hasn't already.
Absolutely. Which is, again, imperative that they show something with Anakin and Thrawn during the Clone Wars and their first meeting with each other.
Exactly. The only thing that really at this point prevents me from saying that it's likely that it's going to be in the adaptation is that they might be saving it for the Allegiances, I think it is. I think that's the new Thrawn novel coming out in July. I always mix it up from Alliances and Allegiances, but they might be saving it for that. I'm not sure.
But again, my line of thinking is that, as I mentioned previously, if you want to cast a wider net and catch more fans, comic books are the best way to do it rather than novels and books. That's my way of thinking, is that if they want to bring in more fans, I think they definitely should pull the trigger and put him in the comics rather than in the novel, because definitely we'll get more in the novel. I don't think that's even a debate. I think since he was mentioned, we won't get a full story again, but even those mentions will at least satisfy us a bit, I think. But what better way to do, like, once you mention him, the second time you show some things in the comics, and the third time in the new novel you basically wrap things up in regards to Thrawn and Anakin in the Clone Wars. That would be a much better way than just not mentioning him at all in the comics and then just mentioning him again in the new novel.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And I do wonder how much Zahn had written at that point. I wonder if this is going to turn out to be a Thrawn trilogy at some point, and maybe he did initially have those Anakin scenes in the novel, but they said, no, no, just wait. We'll have a one-off, or maybe a second novel to a trilogy, the Anakin and Thrawn aspects put in a second book. But nonetheless, I agree. I really hope that they they do that, Bessie, and I hope we see something
I sure do.
in the adaptation. I'm holding out hope because of the Rogue One included some original material, as I understand it. So hopefully, too, with this adaptation, we see some original stuff with Anakin and Thrawn thrown in there too.
Because basically, Timothy Zahn won't really have involvement with this comic, as I understand it. Basically,
Yes.
so moving with that information in mind, the studio or Disney or Lucasfilm or whoever is involved with this more directly than indirectly, they wouldn't be able to really implement things without his will, without Timothy Zahn's will in these comics. This leads me to believe that if they really couldn't pressure Timothy Zahn to put in these implements in the comics, that's why, because this comic is being written and adapted by a completely new crew, I think Disney will have a much greater influence in these comics, because this is a completely new crew and separated from Timothy Zahn. And if Disney has a much more bigger involvement in these comics, then they will definitely go for that aspect, which I'm talking about, which is cast a wider net and get as many fans as possible, and include as much things as possible, which in this case is better. In this case, I would love for them to step in and say, include this and this and this. I would like some fan service in this one. Fan service being the first one, flashback to the Clone Wars and his involvement in the Clone Wars and with Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Bessie. I can almost even too just imagine it as well, because when Thrawn gives that little brief description to Palpatine, it'd just be the perfect time to go with like just two little stills, give that flashback with Anakin and Thrawn. I'll take it. I'll take fan service on this one for sure.
That was my point with Rogue One. A rare case where I would say that it's definitely a good thing that Disney stepped in to reshoot and change some things in Rogue One. In my mind, not to harken back on a previous movie, Rogue One and Attack of the Clones. These two films, for me, stand out as the films that I probably will never watch again, or will watch them once every 10 years or once every 5 years. Yes, Vader. Because simply, I don't want to go in on a rant about Attack of the Clones. I'm sure we all have those things about Attack of the Clones. Like people don't like the prequels. I grew up on the prequels. I love The Phantom Menace. I love Revenge of the Sith. Even though as an adult, of course, you get those. You understand why people do not like those films. And I get it now as an adult, but as a kid, I grew up loving them, and I grew up loving the original trilogy. I love them all equally. The problem with Attack of the Clones is that there's basically no story there. There's basically no meat to the film. There is just things need to happen because we need to move on.
It's a war film.
And we need to move on to Revenge of the Sith. And it's basically, there's a whole lot of things that I could talk about Attack of the Clones, which I won't tackle on here. With Rogue One, we did talk about this previously, is that the misdirections and the problem with the films, and that's why we see them now letting Colin Trevorrow go. We see the problems with the Han Solo directors and everyone. Is that I'm not involved. I'm not involved with the production and in the film industry. How can you hire people who you know what type of movies they do? Christopher Miller and who was the second director? Christopher Miller and I forget the name of the second director. They did 22 Jump Street and the Lego movie. So you've hired them to do Han Solo. Why now are you surprised with something that they did? They already shot like 90% of the film. It's what's reported is that they basically finished the film. And just now you came in to interject and fire those two directors. Same thing goes for the Rogue One director. Man, the name is just blanking right now for me. Let me just see.
Yeah, me too.
God damn it! I had it on my mind. Gareth Edwards, of course. I just remembered it was Gareth Edwards, and like, how can you hire someone, make a film, and then towards the end be shocked? I don't understand that. I'm not in the film industry, and then that's why I'm not gonna sit here and nitpick, but you basically know what he's gonna do. Either get involved from the beginning or let them do their own thing. This was the problem with Rogue One. With Rogue One, I went into the film and basically 45 minutes went by, and I didn't feel like I was watching a Star Wars film. Something in my gut was telling me that this is not a Star Wars film. And
that is not acceptable.
And this is the problem, is that this is why I say this was a great case of the studios interjecting, and it was a good thing. The moment I saw Darth Vader come out, and from that point on, going forward, I was back. I was like, this is okay. We are watching a Star Wars film. It may have been the score of the film, which was not John Williams. It may have been, of course, the tone, the feel. It was gritty. It was dark. It was basically, we were basically watching a Zack Snyder Star Wars film, and it was weird. I can't really explain it, but it was weird. Me watching Rogue One was just at 45 minutes of just I'm not feeling it. I don't know why, but I'm not feeling it. And you can see then that this is the part when there was no reshoots. This is the Gareth Edwards part of the film, section of the film. From that point on, when Darth Vader appears, is just Star Wars beauty. We got everything we wanted. We saw everything we needed to see. The character development was completely awful throughout the whole film. I don't know how you felt about this, Glenn, but my biggest issue with Jyn Erso is that she went from how should I put this? She went from Han Solo to Princess Leia in about an instant. Because this is the problem. We start off with her as she doesn't care about the rebellion. She doesn't care about anything that's happening around her. She's basically forced into the plot where she is captured, and she's not really given a choice. She's they're like Mon Mothma, and she's basically forced into something that she doesn't want. She doesn't even want to know about her father, which is even more weird when we talk about later in the film. She doesn't care about the rebellion. She doesn't care about her father. She doesn't care about anything. She's the ultimate rebel. She doesn't care. Okay, moving on. She doesn't care even more. She doesn't care even more. Further. In an instant, she meets up with Saw Gerrera, and then plays a recording of her father when her father mentions everything that he talks about her and his family, and how he did this to protect her and the Empire, and there's a flaw in the Empire, we need to destroy the Empire and everything. In an instant, she in the next scene, she's assembling the rebellion and telling them that we need to intervene and we need to destroy the Empire.
Well, she was on her knees for a couple of minutes.
It was for me, it was just an instant. It was just, she went from, I don't care about any of this, to, we need to do something, we need to stop the rebellion. And
did she care, though? Did she? I think she did care. She just pretended that she didn't.
That doesn't work for a character. You can't say that.
I think she said, "Oh, I like to think that he's dead." When they're talking about her father, I don't think she actually didn't care about him.
I understand what you're. Of course,
sort of
like
the fact.
Of course, I understand what you're saying, but in the context of the film, you can't have it both ways. If this was a trilogy, you can see her progression, like we see Luke's progression, like we see Han's progression. Everyone, they go from, I don't know, fish out of water to being in it, and they are full in it. They know what they're doing. They know their purpose. You can't do this with one film. Like, Jyn Erso goes from, I don't care about anything, to we need to stop the rebellion, and I'm full-heartedly in this. It's too big of a shift, too quick.
Didn't they do the same thing with Rey, though? She lived on a desert planet, and all of a sudden she became a Jedi.
The thing with Rey that is different. I know what
you
saying.
will answer the question.
Palpatine, you imperial propagandist.
These are the exact. A lot of what I'm hearing with Iden Versio from Battlefront 2, a lot of people are saying the exact same thing about her. Right. Basically, like 1 second to the next, being the special forces, completely dedicated to Inferno Squad, and then almost on a dime switching and joining the rebellion. So I do know what you're saying here, Bessie.
Can I say something about Iden Versio right now? Let's look at her transition. She was brought up by a egomaniac father. And they are even mocking the rebellion together by saying that, what is their world built upon? Hope. Sure, whatever. They smirk on that, of course. Let us go through the whole transition, and this is why I think it's better than Jyn Erso's, because I understood Iden Versio. The problem with Iden Versio is this: she is doing the bidding of the Empire on Endor, and she witnesses the Death Star blown up. You could see her face that she is shook. She doesn't know what to do, but she moves on. She moves forward, and she even tells Miko and what was the other character's name?
Gideon Hask.
Hask, yeah. She tells Miko and Hask, we need to move on right now. We have a mission. All right. She has seen the Death Star blown up. She is noticing that the Empire is withering away. Going further, he sees her father in denial. Basically, her father just won't admit anything, and it's like, oh, it's all fine. We will move. We will move on from this. The Sentinel droid comes in. That scene where the Sentinel droids just sort of goes aggressively at her. It was made purposely, I think, to show how she would react to an aggressive move from basically the Empire or the Emperor. Where it's she says, you're not authorized to know this information. She basically just is brought back by that. She sees that the Empire is withering away. She has a denying father, which it's strange to her how he won't comprehend that this is not the same. We're not the same as we were only a day before. That scene was that scene opened the door for her to understand that everything is not well. To implement in her mind that seed, that not everything is as peachy as these guys want us to think. And the end result of that is the is the attack on the home world, basically, where she is just she can't comprehend how loyalty to the Empire won't bring you anything. They will destroy you in the end. It doesn't really matter if you're loyal or not.
Yeah.
It's through these bit of missions and through these cutscenes I really understand. I really understand what she feels and how she came to that conclusion where it's in. She said, "Enough of this. I don't want to be part of this." I really understand that thinking. Like it had, as quick as it was. Of course, it was a 4-hour gameplay. As quick as it was, it's way better than Jyn Erso. Because Jyn Erso, all throughout that point, even to like just before she started the recording, I got the feeling that she still does not care. Her heart is not in this. She does not care. With a simple message from her father, she realized, oh, I've been wrong my whole life and I need to change my attitude, and done. And the next scene is her screaming at the Rebel Alliance. We need to do something. And we need to save the galaxy. It's like, really? You are the person to talk about let's do something and let's save the Empire? That's my logical thing of it was way too quick. If you want to do a story arc of her, sure, do a trilogy or do something, but not in a 2-hour film or 145, whatever. It didn't make sense to me then. And of course, there's a whole different aspect to it. Where, I'm sorry if I'm going on a tangent, but Rogue One is just, it's something that I truly hate. Then we go to director Krennic. I actually loved this character in the trailers. I loved it because it gave me a sense of we don't just have Tarkin, because in the original trilogy the only basically commander or admiral or Grand Moff, whoever it is, we only get the sense that Tarkin is really above all. And with his death, we just got buffoons. We got Captain Nita, we got Admiral Piet, Admiral,
he could have proved himself.
Admiral Ozzel. We got Admiral Ozzel, and all of these characters were just basically replacements or placeholders or basically buffoons. Like it seemed like they weren't capable of doing their own job, which was probably done intentionally in the script, but whatever the case may be.
Part of the bureaucracy of the military machine.
Yeah. But
what about General Veers? He's a good old chap.
In my opinion, it's just that I was glad to see director Krennic, because I'm talking about the trailers. This is before the movie came out. Director Krennic was I saw him as this really awesome character. He's gonna be toe to toe with Tarkin and Vader. Because in the trailers, I don't know if you remember this, Glenn, but in the trailers there's a scene with them standing on a bridge. The first time they met was on a bridge, not on Vader's castle. That was a studio decision. The first the first time they met was on the Star Destroyer bridge, and he was talking about the Death Star, and he said, "You must realize the immeasurable power." I remember this line specifically. He said, "You must realize the immeasurable power that the Death Star holds." And he was standing, even the body language, he was standing up to Vader. He was approaching Vader as he was clenching his fist. And I was like, wow, this character is going to be pretty cool.
That's the opposite.
Yeah. The next shot with him is him on Scarif. If you remember him with a white cape walking...
Yes.
Walking towards the beach, the water and everything, and he's walking right into battle, and that's awesome. You see him, he doesn't fear anything. He's walking right into battle. And then the movie comes out.
It's not there.
And you watch this buffoon of a character. He's basically a comic relief. That's how I saw him. Even the actor, but Listen, the actor is sort of funny in and of itself. He's a comedy actor. Like, you could see that he does have some tendencies towards comedy. I think he was made for comedy, but whatever. They cast him as Director Krennic. Okay. In the trailer, he did seem pretty awesome, and then the movie comes out, and you see him cowered before Vader in Vader's castle. He couldn't even talk. Basically, his voice was shaking. He was shaking. Vader just commanded him to do things, and he said whatever. In the end, he even like forced choke punned him. So
that's surely for the benefit of Vader and his, expectations of people watching.
Of course, that was a studio decision. I understand that, and even his death scene and his whole confrontation with Jyn Erso and everything.
He had it coming.
It's all disastrously managed, and that's why I hated Rogue One.
So you 1 Bessie out of 10.
Absolutely.
Would you put it down like the second worst Star Wars film with Attack of the Clones?
It's a tie. It's a tie for me. I love things in both of these movies. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like these are the worst movies in history and I will never. I like both of these I like moments in both of these films.
Right.
So don't get me wrong there, but as a standalone film, as a film that stands in and of itself, it's not to my liking. Both of these are just tied for me.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean about Attack of the Clones. It's at the bottom of my list as well. Here's the thing. It's funny saying it after all of those great points you made, Bessie. I really liked Rogue One. Woo-hoo! And here's the thing. In a lot of ways, it's hard for me to rank Episode 7, Rogue One, and Episode 3. They're kind of like, some days I'm a bigger fan of Rogue One than Revenge of the Sith, as crazy as that is for some people. But here's the thing that's not really fair, and the exact same thing for me can be said about Iden Versio. I saw Rogue One with my brother, and he doesn't read the Star Wars novels, and he felt almost the same thing about the beginning third of the movie, like exactly what you were saying, Bessie. Yeah. However, and it's not fair to do this because I agree the movies should stand on their own and you shouldn't have to read novels, but like right from the beginning, I was boom hooked, and it felt like a Star Wars movie for me from the beginning. Mainly because I loved Catalyst so much. So I already felt like I was introduced into the movie, so I can't really say what I would have felt had I not, because my brother didn't read Catalyst, and a lot of people who hadn't read Catalyst have the exact same sentiments you do, Bessie. Rogue One is probably the Star Wars film that I would say, even more than Episode 7, people are pretty low on the prequels, so it doesn't really apply there. But Rogue One is really the one that I hear the most. You love it or you hate it. And I bought in right away. Again, the way that I look at the Jyn character is applying a lot more credence on what she believes Galen to be, and then that affecting the rest of her life from when she was rescued by Saw up until that point. And then finally figuring out what it is. But again, I don't have the experience of not bringing in a bunch of outside sources in with me for the movie. So I look at the Jyn scene, listening to that recording from Galen or so, and being like, oh, this makes so much sense. It's exactly right that when she hears that Galen was really only doing it because he had to at that point. For me, I buy it completely because I've read Rebel Rising, not before the movie, but at this point, I've read Rebel Rising and I've read Catalyst, so I know the interplay between Jyn and Galen from that. So I see what you're saying, Bessie. I basically bought into Rogue One from the beginning, and it's not my favorite Star Wars movie, and I do recognize its flaws in a lot of ways. But yeah, I'm right there with you with Attack of the Clones, though.
I'm gonna say this in regards to Jyn Erso. Of course, you could be right. I didn't read Catalyst, and I would have felt differently, probably, maybe not. I know myself, so it It's those simple things that either get me hooked or get me annoyed. And that got me annoyed. But in regards to the film, I wasn't really talking about the storyline or how it progresses from Catalyst to the film and how those are connected. But my thing was the feel, the tone of the film, the complete. See, minor nitpicks, of course, I'm gonna talk about them, but these are things that bother me as I want to say, wannabe filmmaker, something that I really see and enjoy and know how to tits and bits, and I know where this lies and where this doesn't. Talking about nitpicks, tonally, it's a totally different Star Wars film. I understand what they were trying to do, and I understand that they were trying to do a war gritty movie that was announced way before the movie came out. So I knew that it's going to be something more quote unquote realistic or down, something along those lines. The nitpick, we had never gotten a planet naming font planet thing. That's a Star Trek thing. Those are sci-fi other. You need to in order for you to call yourself a Star Wars film, Star Wars is mostly proud of those things. You can't just be, oh, we've instead of lightsabers, we've made changes to this. That is basically a cliche of a sci-fi film. When I saw those text crawls on the planets that said this planet and this planet and this planet, I was like, right now we're watching Guardians of the Galaxy, or we are watching, I don't know, Star Trek. Like this doesn't feel like Star Wars, because Star Wars prides on its exposition, whereas instead of showing the fans, this is the planet that we're gonna enter right now. Instead of pandering to the fans like that and basically showing you, it shows you through dialogue and through exposition, and you understand where everyone is and what is this planet with exposition and with through the characters, basically. Nitpicks like that one, the score, of course, not even the opening, talking about getting hooked immediately, the opening it was not a text scroll, there was nothing but the logo, it's what I'm trying to say, the Star Wars Rogue One, that it appears on the screen. It kind of seemed like Star Wars Rebels to me. Like Star Wars Rebels would start their episode. Wasn't that kind of cheesy to you to see that Rogue One, that even the graphics were kind of cartoonish? I thought
that was fine. I'm not as into Star Wars as yourselves. I'm a bit older than you two, I imagine, as well. I grew up with the original films. And to be honest with you, that didn't bother me at all in any way. Didn't take anything away from the film. I think part of the thing with the planet names was because there were so many of them. And we never really on a planet long enough to actually know where we were, especially for the prison break and various other things. It was a bit like, oh, we're here now. Oh, no, we're moving there. Oh, we're going over here. So, whereas in the other films, someone actually says, oh, we're on Tatooine, or we're on Geonosis, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. But that didn't bother me as such. The scroll, obviously their choice to remove that. I think they were trying to take this film and say, well, this is a Star Trek. Right, it's a
standalone.
It's a Star Wars film, but this is the way we're going to do it, and this is how the following movies will follow that format. So, but as a child with the original films, it didn't. I actually enjoyed Rogue One a lot because it took me back into that world when I was a child.
Right.
More so than the newer films do. I like the newer films less than I do, say, Rogue One, because that took me back to a place you know, A New Hope era style stuff that I hadn't seen in, I'm not going to say how many years. But yeah.
Yeah, and I've had so many conversations with surrounding the whole feeling like a Star Wars movie or not. Again, too, the catalyst probably already poisoned the well and framed the movie as a Star Wars movie for me. But I think the thing that I liked about Rogue One the most is even at that time, I was really on a kick with, like, let's get a good point of view from the Imperial side of things again. And there was a lot of great stuff just with that and surrounding the Death Star. I think at the end of the day, there was more good than bad. But I think if I was going to point to one thing for sure, then like the character development could have been a bit better for sure. But
because we basically didn't anything, not for one character, anything wasn't resolved. Like nothing was resolved in my mind. Because we saw the death of everyone without knowing, basically without reading the novels and everything. It's we basically didn't get anything out of those characters. What I I know this is going to be a kind of goofy thing for me to say, but what if you want to do something different? What I really would have enjoyed is a Ocean's 11 Rogue One. That's what I would have really enjoyed. And this is I know this is goofy. This is going completely different in a different aspect. This was a dark war movie. Ocean's 11 is a comedy, of course, yeah, but not really adapting it as a comedy, having funny bits and moments, of course, but being in a sense where it's more clever is what I'm trying to say. Getting the plans, getting the Death Star plans in a clever way, as they did in those Ocean 11 movies, in a sense that everyone plays their part perfectly. Everything is to the dot precise. I didn't feel that with the Rogue One crew.
I don't know if that would have worked. I don't think people's expectations of what the film would have been would have probably ended badly if it went that way. I see where you get. I understand.
Because I'm not trying to say make it a goofy comedy.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to say those films were really renowned for. Of course, there were the star-studded cast and the comedy and everything. But what it really came down to is the masterful craft of those people. They were con men to the core, and they really exploited that human nature, where it's everyone plays their role perfectly. Even they got a Chinese man, an acrobatic Chinaman, to flip around because he's a bit smaller than anyone else, and to flip and to not get detected by the detection system. Like, all of those things play perfectly to a point, and everyone would have had a similar role. Whereas, for example, Chirrut was blind, but he could sense things around him, kind of like Kanan does. So you could have gotten something with his character, where he plays a specific role. When we get to this point, we need you. I didn't feel like Chirrut was needed at any point.
He was our non-Jedi.
Yeah.
Didn't he choose? He chose to be blind as the character. The character wasn't originally blind. He asked for the character to be blind, I believe.
Maybe. Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah, and if you watch the, which you won't watch it, Bessie, because every 10 years you go back to watch it. If you watch all the stuff that comes with it, he actually says that the original character, he wasn't actually blind. He asked that his character be blind to give it something extra.
Something extra in
he would have had. I mean, I don't even know. But like you said, I don't know any of their names. If you said to me, name 5 of the characters in that film, I wouldn't be able to.
I think most people are like that, though. You know, it's just like, even I had to struggle to think there for a second what some of the characters' names are. Like Rook, I completely forgot what his name was.
Rook, yeah.
Cassie.
That was my biggest issue, is that everything is well in service to what? You are all soldiers, basically. There is no really...
soldiers of the rebellion.
There is no specific role. That was my point basically with the Ocean's 11, is that I would have loved it if they had specific things that they needed to address or to do or to save the gang or the crew.
Well, the interesting aspect too is I don't know if it's maybe as close as I think it is to the Ocean's 11 idea, but I think the original idea wasn't sort of this ragtag group of rebels who come together to achieve the mission at the end. I think the original idea was supposed to be a type of Inferno Squad storyline where you had these rebellion special agents that discovered the plans. And
they kind of do though, because it's like, what's your code name, and they say Rogue One, and it's they kind of do become that Inferno squadron of the early rebellion, kind of, sort of. But I'm
right.
not really sure.
You'll have to watch it again.
Yeah,
And again and again.
I saw that. I saw that film in 2016. So by 2026, let's talk again.
There you go.
Let's talk again.
Most unfortunate.
When was the last time you watched episode 2?
Oh God. Whew.
It's been a while for me, I'd have to say. I've seen clips of it here and there, but I haven't sat down and watched it for a while.
Sure, of course, because of our nature of work. Yeah, I've seen clips, but God, that's a great question. I thought I was the host. Damn it. Episode 2.
Who will answer?
I seriously have no idea. I seriously have no idea right now.
He's got it on right now.
I think
He's lying.
I watched it this morning just before coming on. I'll watch it tonight. I'm just trying to find some time to actually sit down and watch the original trilogy these days before going to see episode 8.
Episode 8. Let me just preface by saying that my favorite Star Wars film is The New Jedi. The New Hope. The New Jedi.
Yeah.
A New Hope is my favorite Star Wars film. So
for me, that one's probably my, like, if I'm gonna watch a Star Wars film, that's my go-to. I've probably seen that one the most. But yeah, I love episode 4 as well. It's my second one. I have to always go Empire Strikes Back, but yeah.
For some reason, everyone loves Empire Strikes Back, and I get what you mean. I love it to death. But for some reason, A New Hope just kind of tugs at my heartstrings more so than Empire Strikes Back. For some reason.
Yeah, that's why I go to it all the time. Why I've seen it the most. But yeah, it's not far off Empire Strikes Back for me.
So
I even like episode 6 a lot, but a lot of times people are. I see Return of the Jedi very low in a lot of people's rankings, but that's third for me. I'm a big OT guy.
Monty loves
I love the
episode 6, especially the Ewoks.
Jedi. That's my favorite film.
I've always loved the
original. In context, though, of my age at the time, I found the first film okay. As a child, the second film I found quite kind of slow and boring. And the third film had all the epic big space battle, Ewok killing, and various other things in it.
That's a great point. That said, I do hope we get a really big and significant space battle in episode 8. It feels like that's one thing that's been lacking. I think my favorite space battle at this point is probably the Rogue One space battle too. That's another reason why Rogue One is so high on my list.
Sure, yeah, you could say that. In a sense of recently, then yeah, I'm trying to think about Revenge of the Sith. We did not get only the beginning. The battle over Coruscant. Did we get another space battle on Revenge of the Sith? I don't think so.
No.
Only at the end. Well, it wasn't really a space battle. No, not really, I suppose.
Just the beginning, really.
Just the beginning, battle over Coruscant, and we moved on towards the story. But
and even the Battle of Coruscant, I thought was going to be a little bit better than what it was. I think in terms of like my go-to space battle is probably Rogue One at this point. There's been some decent ones in Rebels at this point too, but
Well, Rogue One just kind of, in that sense, yes, it's really implemented beautifully. But you need to think: was that a Gareth Edwards decision or was that a studio decision? Because, like, Rogue One showed us a whole new aspect of space battles with the hammerheads, and it was beautiful to see. And but was that a Gareth Edwards decision or a Disney decision?
Right, yeah.
That's weird. But in that context, I fully agree with you that we need another space battle. And I think we will get them with the Supremacy now. And
yes, yeah, it looks like there should be some pretty good ones in Episode 8. Those new Resistance bombers. I think the Dreadnought has been featured pretty heavily too. I want to see that.
Yep.
That First Order Dreadnought.
Yep.
But yeah, I hope we have something we can point to as like, this is my favorite space battle in Star Wars.
It's it's gonna be interesting to see, for the simple fact that, again, it's not gonna be a space battle to be a space battle. I think it's again gonna be hearken to the Kylo Ren character deciding to, do I shoot or do I don't shoot? I think it's gonna be, I want what you said right now. Like, I want a space battle. That's what I want. I just want a space battle or something trying to destroy something.
Well, most of them are a means to an end anyway, aren't they? Apart from the one at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. They're doing something to aid somebody else doing something. They're not actually, like you said, they're not fighting for the sake of fighting. They're Return of the Jedi. They're holding off the fleet while the ships go in and destroy the Death Star.
And I don't have a problem with that. I think that's what I want. It's something to do something to stop the Empire or the First Order. So I don't have a problem with that. I would love that. But in the context of that, of these space battles, it feels, that's why it feels different, is that there is some story here that it's for example, with The Last Jedi, it's going to be, we're not going to be focused on the space battle, but we're going to be focused on whether Kylo Ren shoots or not. That's the like, that's going to be the focus on the space battle, and we're not going to be able to enjoy the goodness of it. And in that context is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, see, I'm with you. I hope it's not in that context. I would like, one of the things going in too, that we have the Rey and Luke aspects and the Snoke and Kylo, but the First Order Resistance element is also something that I'm very much looking forward to as a faction that's original in the new trilogy here. The First Order is something that I'm really interested in. So hopefully we can see, I mean, not a space battle to serve another purpose. Hopefully we see a legitimate confrontation between these two factions fighting for galactic dominance at this point.
Talking about that, with that in mind, here we go. Another question. Andy Serkis said, despite the fact that the Starkiller base has been destroyed and the Resistance has been putting up a fight, which they did with destroying the Starkiller base, we will discover that the First Order has limitless resources in this one, meaning in this film. Is it a possibility that if Snoke comes from the unknown regions, is there something to the unknown regions that we will, of course, maybe learn with the Snoke connections, that are these limitless resources coming from the unknown regions? And is this why the First Order is so powerful? Because imagine, we could understand from the Imperial point of view, is that the Empire really does have limitless resources. The first Death Star gets blown up, and why not build a second one, even though it was dumb, but they did it. They built a second one because they have limitless resources. With the First Order, they have limitless resources, according to Snoke himself, Andy Serkis. So is someone from the unknown regions financing the First Order? Is there something that we might, in this shape or form, will we learn something about the unknown regions that there is an organization or a planet or a completely new empire over there that might want to make their footprint in this galaxy.
Yeah, I know everyone's gonna probably automatically think something like a Star Forge out there in the unknown regions, but I know I've seen that tossed around. I don't know. See, I wanna. I don't know if I'm gonna take Andy Serkis literally when he says unlimited resources, if he means they literally have that any amount of resources at their disposal.
Right.
I really like what you said there. To finish up there, Bessie, I do think that there are all these different factions within the unknown regions. I think that there's way more going on in the unknown regions than
we know,
than meets the eye, I guess. Yeah, exactly. Than what we know. I mean, because you do have to wonder where all of this. We've learned about the financing in some ways from the novel Bloodline, but what we learned from that novel doesn't explain how they get something like the Supremacy or Starkiller Base or or any of these other massive amounts of dreadnoughts and battle cruisers and whatnot. So I'd like to think that there isn't just the First Order out there. There's also other factions that are contributing to this this entire push, but I don't know, dude. I don't know if I should take. See, this is my skepticism coming out again too. I don't know if I should take Andy Serkis literally. I think maybe he means it as a type of placeholder in the sentence, like, oh, they have an endless fleet that they could go to. But nonetheless, I do like that thought that you had mentioned about there being other factions available in the unknown regions. I actually love that idea.
We're talking about an actor who is extremely intelligent and diligent in his interviews and in his sayings. What he says really can't fall by the wayside. For example, we know Mark Hamill has this habit of just trolling the fans, of course. So we know about that. We're not going to take him all too literally. But with Andy Serkis, he's an extremely intelligent actor. He won't just spew things out there, whatever comes to his mind. We might, like, for example, not trying to diminish anyone's character or something, but for example, like Harrison Ford, like, he doesn't give two craps about anything, basically. Not even Star Wars, nothing. If he says something, you could be like, yeah, he's just improvising, he's just talking out of his bottom, just basically giving an answer that has no value to him. With Andy Serkis is the thing is that somebody he's a character actor. He's a we've seen him with Gollum, with Smeagol, with Caesar in Planet of the Apes, with Snoke. He wants to learn as much as possible about these personality, about this character, so that he has something to work with. He knows the backstory of. He probably knows the entirety of the backstory of Snoke because he needs to get in character, of course. So my line of thinking is that he knows exactly what he's talking about because he has that information. And if he knew that information, he would probably ask the higher ups if it is allowed to discuss, what is allowed to discuss, what is not allowed to discuss. And I think this is relevant. This is not something that he just spewed out and said, "Oh, the First Order has unlimited resources and they can do whatever they want." It's not really coming from that perspective. I think that he's a really intelligent actor, and this has some sort of a bearing. This has some sort of merit. This quote, but again, this is just speculation. Like, we know nothing about the unknown regions. We might know something in the future with the new trilogy and everything that's coming out, but
yeah, definitely would have cleared him to say that stuff, because he wouldn't have said it otherwise, because he would be in trouble, I imagine. So it's probably it's all planned. It's all part of the hype train to get people to become excited.
Absolutely. In my mind, that's definitely what it is that they know that fans are going to think about the unknown regions, probably.
Yeah, and it is cool to think that, like, I really want the See, this is the only reason why I do question it, just because there's been things in visual guides and whatnot saying that their fleet is set up because they don't have unlimited resources. For example, their TIE fighters are beefed up because, unlike the Empire, who had unlimited resources, they could afford to be a little bit nonchalant with their TIE fighters where they can't now. That's the only reason why I wouldn't put too much into it. But that said, I do hope that we see a First Order that's like ominous and a real threat. I do want there to be, for example, it would be awesome if we saw some of these space battles where we see the First Order start to move in on galactic sectors and start taking over sections of the galaxy.
Sure.
I want there to be I want them to really fill the shoes of the Empire in a lot of ways and not just be a force that shows up and then is dealt with. I want them to be a legitimate risk to what's going on, especially now that they've blown up the entire like New Republic and Hosnian Prime. So I think that if we can get them to be a legitimate threat, it would be all the better.
Do you think, and if they do this, this is going to be the dumbest thing if they do this, but I gotta ask, do you think the Supremacy will get destroyed in Episode 8?
I don't think so. What do you think? I can't see Starkiller Base and Supremacy going down back to back.
Yeah, I'd say it wouldn't be. I think you think this is another executioner, don't you? It's going to plow into the Death Star. That's what you're implying, aren't you, Bessie? Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking in movie terms. Like, if they do this, it should be one of the dumbest things to ever happen, whether it be in Star Wars or in movie history. So I definitely think they won't destroy it in Episode 8, but I never talk too soon, simply because it's things that we have said, no, this could never happen, right? They have happened. Nobody, if you asked anybody, do you think the Starkiller Base would be destroyed? I don't think prior to The Force Awakens, like, I don't think anyone would have thought that the Starkiller, they would do that, the ultimate cliche of, here's a Starkiller Base, here's an ultimate weapon, and oh, it's destroyed. And it was destroyed in the most, they were self-aware that we're doing a dumb thing. I know that for a fact, because of the soundtrack. I knew that watching the film for the first time. If you remember, like, the soundtrack, like, if you see the A New Hope, when they destroy the Death Star, it's this magnificent thing that they do, and you feel a sense of pride because of the soundtrack. The soundtrack builds up towards the destruction, and after it's destroyed, you have those tingling sounds that it's just, it's beautiful. With The Force Awakens, when they destroyed the Starkiller Base, it was a linear motion. Like, I remember right now watching the planet explode and knowing and hearing the soundtrack, and it was just, yeah, we know this is dumb, but for some reason, which I don't know why, we can't put it in the second film of the new trilogy. So yeah, that's why I'm not really sure to explicitly say no way they're not going to do that, because Starkiller Base, if you ask anybody, they would say no way that's gonna be destroyed. But it was.
Isn't that supposed to be one of their primary bases, though, this ship?
Right. That's
Isn't there some artwork with it having other Star Destroyers actually, like, connecting to it? And
yeah, supposedly.
Yeah, it's not just their ship, exactly. Yeah. It's like wasn't it like a
supposedly
a
that's
shipbuilding yards and stuff?
Yeah. That's where Snoke kind of lives, I guess. It's his main base of
that's
operations.
where the throne room
destroyed.
is, right?
The insurance premiums alone would be astronomical. The Empire does do well with, like, huge projects. If they ever say to you, "Oh, look at this huge! We just built this thing here. You know, it costs X amount. Don't get on it. It's going to or collapse."
Absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought about that point. The whole like insurance fraud aspects that might be in episode 8.
I would be the opposite of Tarkin. Anybody, I'm just waiting for anyone to approach me and say, Grand Moff Tarkin, we need to evacuate, and I would be immediately, yeah, sure, let's get out of here.
Yeah. Or on the ship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let's go. I hope that they don't. I hope that they have something that I think if I could point to one thing that maybe was the poorest executed aspects of the prequel was not really having things go from connecting from movie to movie, like especially on the side of Sith Lords and whatnot. But I want should the main bases of the First Order to at least keep surviving until episode 9 as long as possible here. So I hope we see. Is it confirmed that we will actually see the supremacy in episode 8?
I think we definitely will because in the trailer it is revealed. I think there is a looming in the shadows. If you remember, there's a scene. There's a space battle scene, and in the background you can see this huge thing coming out of the shadows. But they cut quickly to a different view of the battle. So you get only a second or two of the supremacy actually coming out of the shadow, and immediately it goes to cut different view aspect. So from the trailers, I can 99% assure you that we will definitely see it. But even like the throne room, I think the throne room should be in the supremacy.
The first time I saw that throne room, I was a bit disappointed, I have to admit, but seeing it now in subsequent like I don't know if you guys have seen the Awake TV spot, but now it's kind of caught on to me. I like that throne room that Snoke has going for him.
That's great that you mentioned that. It just occurred to me, and I want to ask you something, and it has been puzzling me. I have no idea what does this mean, or if it means anything, but I think it definitely does, because it's really weird. In the Awake, I think it was in the Awake teaser. What does Snoke say? It's a line that he says. He says, the darkness rises and light to meet it. Is it that line? So it's weird, and I hope you caught this one too, because when he says darkness rises, it's an old man voice. It's not a monster voice.
Yeah.
Monty knows a lot.
Rises, light. What's it say? Darkness rises.
Light to meet it.
Light to meet it.
Darkness rises, light to meet it.
Well, the
Snoke
first part too sounds almost Palpatine-ish, like very much.
Yeah. He rips off that face mask. He's underneath it.
Yeah.
I'm back.
But
the thing is, like, I've really focused. My video yesterday is all about that quote, just those two sentences from Snoke. But I did have to do a bit of background checking and research and wonder if that was Snoke on both of those lines. Somebody had said that it was almost Andy Serkis in his normal voice, the darkness rises aspects, but I think that it is Snoke for sure saying those lines, which I love. I love that whole darkness rises, light to meet it. See, I focus so much on the Force that anyone saying anything dark or light, I love that.
But my thing is, my view of it is that's definitely Snoke, 100%. But yes, he talks in a normal voice. That's my question. Is this kind of related to what they're now calling Project Resurrection or something with that machine? Does he regenerate his original form with it? Was that line said in a way where he was young again, or some sort of I don't know what to say, but when he was normal, and as he was saying that, he transformed into this monster again because he needs more power supposedly, or something, or more youth. I don't really know how to explain it, but he does, if you hear it, he does say darkness rises as an old man, and then says and light to meet it, and as Snoke, as his monster voice. He says light to meet it as Snoke, as a monster, but he says darkness rises as a normal voice. That was my question, is that why is that a two-parter? Why is Snoke saying darkness rises in a young voice and then in a normal voice, I should say?
Yeah, see, I can't speak to too much about the Project Resurrection stuff. I've almost been avoiding it to just so that in case an idea pops in, I'm not I don't know too much about it going into a script or anything like that. So there is potentially that connection where maybe Snoke is regenerating and thus it affects his voice at different periods. What I ultimately concluded was it was just like, and Palpatine on the chat here might be able to do it better than I can, but you know how Palpatine tried to kind of change the cadence of like what he was saying or slowing down and kind of raising his voice and really like gravelly at some points. I kind of just almost talked myself into it just being something like that, but the beginning is very different from the Snoke, even that latter part of the lines. But I don't know, unless it is something that has to do a byproduct of the Project Resurrection, maybe something going on there with Snoke and it's affecting his vocal cords at some point. I kind of just see it as him trying to achieve a different cadence in almost a teaching or in trying to make a bigger impact on those sentences. But I haven't seen too much of the resurrection stuff, to be honest, just in case it's if it affects me too much. But
I see. Well,
maybe that's a throwback to the whole rise thing in the Emperor. When he says that in a bit of a weird way. There's rising, rise. He says now rise. He does that thing and then he talks normally, but he does that weird. It's that bit when Anakin turns and he gets a bit creepy.
Sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then even that we will have peace. Like he kind of changes cadence and tone and pacing and things like that. But
absolutely.
Yeah, that Awake one, I almost see there was so much awesome within it, but I almost regret watching it at this point just because it shows quite a bit. Even more that, a little bit of spoiler heavy, but the one we talked about earlier, the Rey Resist, I felt like that one didn't give too much based on, if you saw the trailer, you basically saw everything that was in that one.
Yeah.
But there was so much new stuff in the Awake one that I was just like, whoa, this is like a brand new trailer here.
Yeah, you could say that. It's weird, but what basically the last question, because I don't know if you guys know, but we've been on for 2.5 hours now, so I'm gonna give time now to my guest. Monty will stay on until the morning. There's no problem for Palpatine. The Empire is excellent. The Empire is pretty much running itself, so Palpatine has nothing to do. He's bored. But,
matters of state, they say.
But for Glenn, I'm gonna say this last thing, which is, what is that contraption that everyone is talking about?
See, that's something. His throne room. Yeah, see, and that's something I apologize for ending on this one here too, Bessie. That's something I've been avoiding myself too. So have people been connecting it to what Luke had in Battlefront? See, I'm not even sure exactly because I've really gone out of my way to not see what people were pointing to up above his throne room. But I don't know. I wish I could say more on it.
Luke in Battlefront doesn't really have anything to do with Project Resurrection, because Luke finds the compass, the star map compass, and I think it will connect The Last Jedi, because he will. I saw a toy line where he will definitely have it on Octu as well with him. So that's a star map of sorts, a compass that maybe will serve Rey as she explores the Jedi lore and everything. The Project Resurrection thing is mentioned briefly again, the Lucasfilm cliffhanger thing. It's mentioned briefly when Husk. How did I forget this? It's either Kylo Ren and Husk talk about it, or or Miko and Hosk before Miko is killed by Hosk talk about it.
Right.
Whereas they say the Project Resurrection is up. It's to the utmost importance. It's basically something really important that they need to protect, or to protect the knowledge of it and not share it with anyone. Basically, that's why people are speculating that that machine. I don't want to spoil it for you now. I don't know what do you.
No, that's fine, Bessie. Yeah, I probably insulated myself too much from it. So yeah,
I completely
go
understand.
ahead.
I know what you're talking about. I completely understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Bessie. I'm actually interested to hear at this point.
No problem. That's the machine that they're the contraption, the thing that they're connecting with the fans and everyone, because that Project Resurrection thing is being kept a secret and nobody is talking about it. They only mention it. Hosk definitely mentioned it, but with who I can't really remember right now. Hosk mentioned it, so that they are connecting Project Resurrection with that contraption. There is something that since it's named Resurrection, it has something to do with resurrecting someone or something. So I don't know. There's not much to go on, but people are speculating that is it, or that it's something bringing the youthfulness back to Snoke. Or
yeah, I've seen that one for a bit now. So yeah, I could see people connecting the two that way. Project Resurrection and Snoke regenerating at this point.
There is something to it, but not really sure what it is until we watch The Last Jedi and find out. With that, thank you so much, guys, for joining the podcast for today. It was my pleasure to have Glenn here from Star Wars Reading Club, Andrew for Star Wars Ramblings, and of course, as always, Palpatine is a frequent guest of ours. And
sometimes everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bessie. I appreciate the invite. This was a lot of fun.
No problem. Hope we can do it again sometime real quick. And thank you so much for your knowledge and everything. And I hope the fans had fun. Sorry, guys, for not being able to talk to you guys too much in the chat. We just had a lot of things to talk about, but next time, definitely we'll interact with you guys much more. With that, as always, may the Force be with you.
Always. 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 Always.
Is Palpatine saying that?
I don't know.
Always.